Hello there, everyone. We're gonna read chapter 5 of A Week with Fluttershy. Hopefully, all you guys have enjoyed so far, and let's hop right into this. Fluttershy placed her saddlebags down and gave Spike a kiss after he had placed all the apples into the nearby fruit bowl. I guess I'll go fix us something to eat, she said. Spike stopped her, though. No, Fluttershy, it's okay. I'm not that hungry anyway. She kissed him again and reached over, tossing an apple down to him. They took a seat on the couch and ate the apples. Spike spoke up, though. I can't believe I only have one last day with you. Fluttershy could hear the sadness in his voice. He looked down at the ground as he spoke to her. I just wanted to thank you for all you've done for me. You've done more in 1 week than Twilight has ever done in years. I'll never love her as much as you. Fluttershy quietly replied, Spike, I love you too. I'll always love you more than anything in all of Equestria. You just make me feel so good about myself. I know that I can always trust you and that you'll never do anything to hurt me. Spike replied sincerely, Of course not. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. I wish I could too, Spike. Fluttershy hesitated a moment. I want to die with you, she said passionately, truthfully. Fluttershy surprised even herself as she lurched towards Spike and gave him the tightest hug, like she never wanted to be separated from him. Fluttershy began to cry. Huh? Spike asked, still locked into a hug with Fluttershy. It just frustrates me so much. How come we can't be together? Why does everything have to be so unfair? She sobbed. Tears were streaming down her eyes as Spike wrapped his arms around her and tried to comfort her. He rubbed slowly on her back and gave her kisses on the neck and cheek. He couldn't bear to see her cry like that. The two sat there in silence, cradling each other as the time ticked by. It was dark outside as Fluttershy had begun to stop crying. Spike continued to rub her back and kiss her as he whispered comforting comments into her ear. Eventually, though, Spike broke away from Fluttershy as he said, Come with me, I want to show you something very special. She looked at him quizzically, but accepted a kiss from him. Spike hopped off the couch, and Fluttershy followed suit as she tried to wipe her eyes. Spike opened the door and pointed the way for Fluttershy to exit out. She looked at him quizzically, but did as he said and walked outside. Looking up at the graceful full moon, she jumped though. As Spike clicked the door shut behind them and began walking down the same path that they had come from not but a few hours ago. Fluttershy followed Spike closely as they walked silently through the forest and approached the bridge, the moon their only source of light. Spike looked around to make sure that Fluttershy was still behind him. She had not strayed away even a step. They crossed the bridge, still in silence, and they walked a few minutes until they climbed all the way to the top of the hill. Spike took them a few paces to the right, stopping by a tall oak tree and taking a seat to stare out over the sleeping Ponyville below. Fluttershy tapped him on the shoulder and in a whisper asked, Spike, what are we doing here? Spike turned to her and blushed as he explained, You see, I sometimes sneak out here at night just to get away from the world. Sometimes to just look up at the stars. He looked up, and sometimes I come out here too. He hesitated. Wish I had some pony. He glanced up at Fluttershy. Spike asked, Will you stay here with me? I mean just for a few minutes. Spike was cut short as Fluttershy kissed him and answered, I'll stay here with you forever. They laid flat on their backs so close that they were touching each other as they stared up at the stars, whispering, I love you, to each other simultaneously when a shooting star shot overhead. Fluttershy instantly felt better, immersed with the beautiful sight above. It must have been an hour before either one made a move. Spike rolled over and Fluttershy squeaked as he got on top of her chest and planted his lips firmly on hers. He was driven by pure love. This time, they closed their eyes and kissed passionately. The moon and stars acted like candles, burning as a romantic light. Eventually, Spike broke the kiss and groaned as he kissed Fluttershy on the neck and on her chest. It was only a few minutes before Fluttershy took her hoof and gently pushed Spike over to her left. The soft grass prickling his back as she rolled over and mounted him. Fluttershy planted her lips firmly on his, and again they closed their eyes in bliss. Like Spike had done to her, she broke the kiss and began to kiss all over his chest. Spike could feel himself becoming aroused again, and it only been a few hours. Spike reached his arms and began to stroke her wings and began as she did her work. Spike reached his arms and began to stroke her wings and back as she did her work. Fluttershy kept kissing lower and lower, and then and smiled sensually down at the blushing Spike as she felt something poke her down below. This time though, she moved herself forward a little and once again kissed Spike on the neck. Fluttershy stared him in the eyes as she reached around, grabbing his rock-hard penis and forcing it against her moist pussy. Fluttershy elevated herself a few inches and continued to stare and blush down at Spike as she rubbed his penis all over her lips, feeling herself become more aroused with each pass. Finally, she finished. She stopped rubbing Spike's cock against her pussy, holding it straight up. She released it as she lowered her body, pushing it into her slowly. They both groaned as she forced it all the way in. Fluttershy did not waste time in pleasing him. She instantly sped up her pace. Spike began to arch his back every time he felt his head smash against her inside. Fluttershy was dripping wet down there. The ground was literally soaked with her juice. Now she really amped up her speed. She began to bounce up and down on Spike's cock as hard and as fast as she could go. She really wanted her last night with Spike in private to end like no other. She began to scream quietly out short bursts. Every time she felt him smash against her internal vaginal walls, Fluttershy was unable to control her pleasure as she let out a piercing scream while she had a huge orgasm. Spike felt the warm liquid go rushing around his cock and splatter on the ground and his legs in a small puddle. Fluttershy kissed him and stared deep into his eyes. Spike thought that Fluttershy's eyes looked especially beautiful in the sea of stars above them. Fluttershy slowed her pace now, obviously becoming weary from her orgasm. As hard as she could, she was practically slamming her buttocks down on Spike. She just couldn't help herself. He felt so good inside of her. She could feel some of Spike's pre-cum leak out, and she knew that it was almost time. She really wanted to impress him, so she kissed him and then raised her hind end up, taking all of it out except the very top of his head. She then slammed herself down so hard that the one single thrust made her orgasm as well. Again, her juices flew out in all directions. They each blushed a deep breath, as they did every time. As Spike's load went rushing inside of her, she loved it when he filled her up. They continued to lay there, breathing heavily and staring into each other's eyes. "I love," Spike panted. "I love you so much, Fluttershy," he said. "I love you too, Spike," she replied as she planted one final kiss on him. Spike went flaccid and gravity forced his load out of Fluttershy. She blushed as it went streaming down her legs. They stood slowly on jelly legs and took one last glance up at the stars. "I guess we should head back now?" asked Spike, looking up at Fluttershy. She nodded in agreement, and the two took off down the path toward Fluttershy's cottage. It was a truly beautiful night. The end. One last fuck before they say goodbye, and Spike has to return home to Twilight. Alright, sorry about the last time I read too fast. I was annoyed. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed this reading, and stay tuned for the last couple chapters.
100,000 stories have filled my head as I look for the answers in what I've read, secretly waiting for my life to change.